Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar on using the National Transit Database, or NTD, to support safety analysis in an SMS. My name is Andy Lofton, and I'm a contractor supporting FTA's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, or PTASP, Technical Assistance Center. Joining me for today's webinar is Stuart Mader, FTA's new PTASP Implementation Program Manager. Prior to joining FTA, Stuart founded and led the VAX Transit Initiative, advising transit agencies on supporting COVID-19 vaccine access and building public awareness of more than 580 agencies in the US and Canada providing access to vaccines. Stuart previously led customer experience initiatives for New Jersey Transit and helped the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey establish its Customer Advisory Board, the Path Writers Council. Stuart has written about transit policy for Mass Transit, Mobility Lab, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and other publications. He holds an undergraduate degree in chemistry from the University of Hartford and a master's degree in curriculum development and instructional technology from the University at Albany. Welcome, Stuart. Throughout the webinar today, we invite you to type any questions that you may have directly into the Q&A pod located on your Microsoft Teams live screen. We're going to be reviewing any questions that you ask, and we have a few specialists that are standing by to queue up all of those questions so that we can provide answers during a Q&A session at the end of our webinar today. Now, for those of you who are familiar with our PTASP TAC webinars, you probably already know this, but both a copy of the materials, the slides that we're using today, as well as a recording of the webinar itself, will be made available to you for download on the PTASP Technical Assistance Center's resource library. So our objectives for today's webinar are, number one, we want to review the safety performance data reported by our Section 5307 recipients and subrecipients to the National Transit Database. And number two, we want to review ways in which transit agencies can access and use this data to support Safety Management System, or SMS, related activities. So we're going to start off today by discussing what is the safety related data that's available from the National Transit Database. And then we're going to talk about how your agency could use that data to support your safety management system, your SMS. Specifically, we're going to look at activities like setting safety performance targets and monitoring safety performance at your agency. And we're going to leverage a few actual demonstrations where you can see an individual access these data products and begin to use them. And of course, as with all of our PTASP TAC webinars, we're going to finish off with a question and answer session. So with that, let's get started. Now, many of you may be familiar with the National Transit Database already. You may be the individual at your transit agency that prepares and collects and then enters safety data into the NTD on behalf of your agency. Perhaps you have a role where you update monthly service metrics or help support the completion of your agency's annual report to the National Transit Database or other NTD-related activities. But for those of you who may be a little less familiar with the NTD, we wanted to just provide a quick summary of what the NTD is. So the NTD is a transit data collection system created and managed by the Federal Transit Administration that captures a wide range of data from transit agencies across the country. Data collected includes a number of different types of information, things like financial data, service and operational data, data related to transit assets, and of course, the focus of today's webinar, safety data. Now, the NTD is designed to capture data that can support the Federal Transit Administration's formula grant programs. And that's a key purpose of the NTD, to capture the information to help support those formula programs. But also, a key purpose of the NTD is to capture data that can support local, state, and regional transit planning efforts, as well as to support educational institutions and researchers that are performing transit-related analyses. Now, when we talk about using data from the NTD to support a safety management system, we're largely talking about the data that's reported by recipients and subrecipients of 5307 funding. And we call these urban reporters. And we're going to break down those urban reporters into these two major buckets that the NTD distinguishes between for these urban reporters. And those are full reporters and reduced reporters. So a full reporter is going to be any reporter who, number one, operates any rail service. So if you operate rail service, you're a full reporter. But it also includes any transit agencies who operate more than 30 vehicles in maximum service. Now, if you are a full reporter, so you're this urban transit agency, I've got over 30 vehicles in maximum service. Well, this means that I'm going to report ongoing, detailed safety data by mode. And it also means that I'm going to report data such as mechanical failures, and specifically major mechanical failures, as part of my detailed annual report to the FTA. Now, our reduced reporters, on the other hand, this column to the right of your screen, these are for urban transit providers that, number one, they don't operate any rail service. And number two, they operate 30 or fewer vehicles in maximum service. So if you qualify as a reduced reporter and you report to NTD as a reduced reporter, FTA has established reduced reporting requirements for you. These reduced reporters report limited safety event data in summary, annual total form. And they do not report any information on mechanical failures or major mechanical failures at all to the National Transit Database. So very different requirements for these two groups of reporters. FTA makes an incredible amount of the data it collects through the NTD available to the public on its public-facing NTD website. You can find that at the link provided on your screen, transit.dot.gov/NTD. The data on the website is published through multiple data products. And those data products are available for a number of different categories of information and for different time periods, different reporting years. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to have a few demonstrations later on in this webinar. And so you will get to see how an individual can actually come to this page, select what type of data it wants to download. You can see how that it can be downloaded and how you can begin to manipulate that data to support your SMS related activities. And we'll get to those demonstrations a little bit later in today's webinar. But first, let's talk about a few of the data products made available on that NTD page that your agency may be interested in. First of all, we want to talk about data products specific to full reporters. We'd like to point out that FTA publishes what it calls the Safety and Security Major Only Time Series data file. This file provides major safety event totals by event type, provides the totals of the associated injuries and fatalities for those major safety events. And it breaks this data down by each individual agency, as well as the specific modes that that transit agency provides. All of these data are provided at annual totals, and you can find the totals for each year broken out in this database. The next file we'd like to point out is the monthly module data release file. Now, this file provides service data. So within the monthly module data release, you can find information on ridership, like boardings. You can also find data on service provided, like vehicle revenue miles, which should be very important as your agency sets safety performance targets. And this monthly module data, again, is captured and reported by full reporters. And it's broken down by individual agency, by the modes they provide. And data points are collected and provided in the data product by individual months. We also want to point out the annual database vehicle maintenance file. which is where you could go to find data related to major mechanical failures. And again, that data will be broken out by agency and by mode. It could be very useful in your safety performance target setting activities. And also, we want to point out the major safety events file. What's unique about this file is it provides data users with safety event level details. So the data file actually can provide a single record for one event. And it allows users to access details related to that event in the data product itself. And again, this is not a summary document which presents data in aggregate, but instead provides event record level data. Now, for reduced reporters, your agency may be interested in a couple of data products. One is the annual database safety information. This file will provide annual totals reported to the NTD by reduced reporters for the 3 data points that they report, which is the agency-wide total of major events, the agency-wide total of injuries, and the agency-wide total of fatalities. It also points you, if you're a reduced reporter, to the annual database service file. And this file will provide service data totals covering that agency's annual report year, and where you can find information on annual vehicle revenue miles, annual unlinked passenger trips, for example. And this would be the place you would go to locate that. And again, that data is broken out by agency and also by mode. Now, there's a lot of data available in those reports we just talked about, and also all of the other reports that are made available on the NTD data page. And a lot of this information can be used to support your agency's SMS. Now let's take a look at a few examples of how you can leverage data to support your agency's SMS. NTD data can be especially useful for agencies, especially when we think of activities like benchmarking and performance monitoring. These things can help really a wide range of elements of your agency's safety management system. Some specific activities that really jump to the front are things like setting safety performance targets, or SPTs. Things like your agency's safety risk management, or SRM process, and the associated activities that your agency would undergo, perhaps related to a safety risk assessment. Also, NTD data could be very helpful in helping your agency to establish safety objectives. And really, when you think about operating your agency's SMS, there could be a number of data-related questions that you have that you could look to the NTD potentially to help support your agency's activities. Maybe you're interested in understanding national trends in pedestrian collisions. Well, you could look to the NTD to try to get more information on that. Or maybe you want to do some safety performance benchmarking or monitoring of your agency, but you want to compare it to a peer group. So maybe you could use the NTD data to establish a peer group based on the types of vehicles you operate, the modes that you operate, maybe based on your geographical region or the amount of service that you provide. Perhaps your agency is interested in finding industry averages for a specific mode, like demand response. And you want to look to the NTD to see what those national modal rates are. All of these are examples for which you could look to the NTD to help support your agency's activities. So let's look at how the available NTD data could help you with a requirement for Part 673, specifically safety performance targets, or SPTs. So how could that NTD data help you at your agency with developing SPTs and setting those targets? Just to recap, Part 673.11A3 requires that the agency safety plan include performance targets based on the performance measures established in FTA's National Public Transportation Safety Plan. Now, this National Public Transportation Safety Plan establishes 4 safety performance measures, or SPMs. These include fatalities, injuries, safety events, and system reliability. Now, the plan goes on to define 7 safety performance targets, right, associated with these original 4 safety performance measures. And so for fatalities, injuries, and safety events, there are 2 SPTs for each, 2 required safety performance targets. For fatalities, it's the total number of fatalities by mode and the fatality rate per VRM by mode. And same for injuries and events. It's the total by mode as well as the rate per VRM by mode for both injuries and also safety events. For the system reliability safety performance measure, the National Public Transportation Safety Plan establishes a single safety performance target, and it's mean miles between major mechanical failures, again by mode. So let's talk about the relevant data to those safety performance measures and targets and how they're reported to the NTD by urban reporters. So full reporters will report fatalities on an ongoing basis to the NTD, and injuries as well, reported on an ongoing basis to the NTD as part of those major events that the agency reports. And major safety events are submitted on an ongoing basis to the National Transit Database for full reporters. Major mechanical failures are reported by full reporters on an annual basis as part of their annual report submitted to the National Transit Database. Service data points, things like vehicle revenue miles, are reported by full reporters on a monthly basis to the NTD. For our reduced reporter set, these first 3 data points, fatalities, injuries, and major safety events, they're all reported annually on a single form as part of that reduced reporter's annual report to the National Transit Database. Now we have an asterisk on our screen here for each one of those 3 data points, and that's because agencies, these reduced reporters that report the fatalities, injuries, and major safety events, the form does not distinguish by mode, and instead it captures these 3 data points at an agency level. Major mechanical failures for reduced reporters is not captured by the National Transit Database. So reduced reporters do not report this, so obviously it's not available in the NTD. Service data for reduced reporters is submitted annually by the reduced reporters, and this service data is broken out by mode. So now let's take a moment to kind of put all of those pieces together, and let's link up our SPMs and our SPTs and tie them to data products that could be useful in supporting that SPT setting process. So for fatalities, injuries, and safety events, we know that at a minimum, we have to have a safety performance target for the total by mode, as well as the rate per VRM by mode. So for a full reporter, I could access historical data for my agency by looking at the safety and security major only time series data file. And that'll provide me with the total major safety events reported by my agency each calendar year. And it'll provide me with the resulting fatalities from those major safety events and the resulting injuries from those major safety events. I also, if I'm interested in setting a calendar year rate, I can access the monthly module data release, where I report, as a full reporter, service metrics, including vehicle revenue miles, on a monthly basis. And so I can marry up my calendar year safety totals with my calendar year service totals to calculate a rate. And again, that would apply to the fatality SPTs, the injuries SPTs, as well as the safety events SPTs. And for system reliability, I can access my annual database vehicle maintenance file to identify how many major mechanical failures I reported for that report year. Now for reduced reporters, obviously less information is reported by them to the NTD, so there's less data to pull out from the NTD. But I could go to the annual database safety information file to see total fatalities reported for my agency. Again, it won't break it down by mode, but it'll give the total for my agency. And then I could go to my annual database service file to look at how much VRM I provided for the year. Now, for reduced reporters that operate more than one mode, you may need to look at your own records to be able to set targets based on modal specific things. So with that, we've covered a lot of data products, what's available on the NTD website, but what we'd like to do is to take a moment to have a demonstration of how you could access NTD data to find a national total.
The Federal Transit Administration publishes data reports that summarize entries made to the National Transit Database, or NTD. To access these reports, log on to transit.dot.gov/NTD. Select NTD Data from the menu to the left of the screen, then select NTD Data Reports. Finding specific data reports takes just a few clicks. You can search all available reports by category, by product type, by year, or by name. Follow the link at the top of the page for a handy reference guide to available data products. Let's explore how to find the number of fatalities by mode for calendar year 2020. Since fatalities are part of FTA's safety and security data collection, we will click to filter on Safety and Security, then click Apply. We know that fatalities are reported as major events. Let's select Safety and Security Major Only Time Series Data. This web page provides a link to download the latest data report. The web page also provides considerations for data users. Let's open the data report. This first worksheet, the README file, provides an introduction to the data available in the data report. The worksheet also summarizes threshold changes implemented during the time period of the report. This is particularly important for users who want to use the data for multi-year comparisons. The next worksheet, Data Points, describes each of the data points and explains each of the acronyms found in the data report. Similarly, the Person Type Notes worksheet provides an in-depth review of the categories used across the years included in this file. Let's take a look at some data. This report provides safety data by calendar year starting with 2002. For this demonstration, let's take a look at fatalities from calendar year 2020. Use the arrow at the bottom left of the screen to scroll to the 2020 worksheet. This report provides data by NTD identifier, or column B. This is a 5-digit code assigned to each entity that reports to the NTD. Columns B through J provide basic information about the reporting agency, such as the mode and type of service provided, and the city and state in which the agency is headquartered. Don't forget about the Data Points worksheet for more information about the data points and acronyms used in this file. The next set of columns, K through R, show information about the level of service provided. It is important to note that while the safety and security data included in this file is presented by calendar year, the service data found through columns K through R is presented by the reporter's fiscal year. While the data provided in these service columns provides a useful reference for the general level of service provided, it cannot be used to calculate rates of safety events per calendar year. Columns S through X show the totals for different kinds of safety events, such as collisions and fires. Columns Y through AO show the total fatalities by person type. Columns AP through BG show the total injuries by person type. To find the total number of fatalities reported by bus modes, use the filter here in column D. Alternatively, we can scroll to the bottom of the spreadsheet to find totals by mode already calculated for us. Here is our row showing the totals for all bus modes. Scrolling across the page, we can see that agencies reported a total of 113 fatalities for bus modes in calendar year 2020.
Now that we've seen how to find a national total, let's look at another demonstration on how we could calculate a national fatality rate.
We just explored how to find the number of fatalities by year, by mode. Your agency may also be interested in finding the rate of fatalities. For example, agencies may want to know the rate of fatalities in 2020 per 1 million vehicle revenue miles, or VRM, reported for the bus mode. To calculate the rate per 1 million VRM, we will need information about ridership reported in calendar year 2020. From the same NTD Data page we saw in the previous video, we can select Monthly Ridership from the Data Categories menu and click Apply. For today's demonstration, we will use the monthly module Raw Data Release. For more information about the data products you see here, click on the NTD Data Products Guide link at the top of the page. This web page provides a link to download the latest data report. The web page also provides considerations for data users. Let's open the data report. This first worksheet, the Raw README worksheet, provides an introduction to the data available in the data report. The Master worksheet shows all data points collected in this workbook by NTD Identifier. The workbook also includes sheets specifically for unlinked passenger trips, or UPT, vehicle revenue miles, or VRM, vehicle revenue hours, or VRH, and vehicles operated in maximum service, or VOMS. At the very end of the workbook, we can find worksheets that provide UPT per calendar year and VRM per calendar year. We know that we want to find VRM for the bus mode for calendar year 2020. This worksheet provides data by NTD Identifier, or column A. Remember, this is a 5-digit code assigned to each entity that reports to the NTD. Columns A through I provide basic information about the reporting agency, such as the mode and type of service provided. The next set of columns, J through AC, show VRM provided by calendar year. Calendar year 2020 is here in column AB. Since the data we viewed in the previous video applies only to full reporters, let's select Full Reporters here in column E. In our previous video, we showed how the data could be viewed by general service type, or bus, rail, ferry, and other. Let's filter on our bus modes here in column H, including CB, or commuter bus, DR, demand response, MB, motor bus, PB, Publico, RB, bus rapid transit, TB, trolley bus, and VP, van pool. If we select column AB, we can see that the sum of VRM for calendar year 2020 for bus modes is 2,358,722,118.
Now, of course, your agency may use NTD data for more than just helping you to set safety performance targets. Safety data that you could access from the NTD could also help provide very meaningful context for your agency's safety risk management process. Now, Part 673.5 defines the SRM process as a process for identifying hazards and analyzing, assessing, and mitigating safety risk. And safety risk is defined as the composite of the predicted severity and likelihood of the potential effect of a hazard. Now, obviously, the focus of today's webinar is not safety risk assessments. Just to review at a high level, this safety risk assessment, or SRA, is where a transit agency is going to identify the condition or the hazard, identify any potential consequences of that hazard, and then looking at that potential consequence, determine the severity, how bad it could be, and the likelihood, how often it could occur. And by combining those two things, likelihood and severity, we get a safety risk rating. So the NTD data products could help offer your agency some valuable information to help support those assessments, both looking at likelihood determinations and severity, just by helping inform that process. Now, for our full reporters, the major safety events file and the monthly module data release could be very useful in supporting likelihood and severity assessments. For example, you could look and explore how often a specific type of event has occurred in the past. You could compare that against your agency's service metrics. In terms of severity, you could look at how many injuries or fatalities have been linked to that type of event or to a specific location, or really any other of a wide range of data points available in the data products. Now, because limited data is collected from reduced reporters, that type of context is really not as easily provided from reduced reporter data. And again, while the data for reduced reporters contains annual totals, those totals can't be broken out by things like event type or location or mode or any other details. So the data products that we've seen so far allow us to look at event summary data. But if we wanted to drill down into the data and look at some details for a specific event, we could use the major safety events file. So right now we want to have another demonstration of the details an agency could find when it accesses the major safety events file.
In addition to the data products we explored in our previous two videos, the Department of Transportation publishes more extensive information on major safety events. For example, your agency may be interested in information about derailments occurring in the yard. Logging on to the Department of Transportation's Major Safety Events website, we can view the latest data set. The data set includes information on major events reported to FTA since January 2014. This dataset gives us information about each reported safety event. This includes the date and time of event, property damage estimates, the number of injuries and fatalities, the number of vehicles involved, the location of the event, and weather and road conditions. Let's explore yard derailments. We can filter our view by clicking on Filter at the top of the table. Click to add a new filter condition, then change the filter to Event Type. Type in Yard Derailment and press the Enter key to see the list of yard derailments. Exporting this data is easy. Simply click the Export button, then select the type of file you would like to download.
Now let's take a look at how we could use the major safety events file by applying more than just one filter.
Let's explore another way agencies can use the data on the Department of Transportation's Major Safety Events website. This time, let's look at demand response collisions occurring at an intersection. We can filter our view by clicking on Filter at the top of the table. Click to add a new filter condition, then change the filter to Event Type. Type in non-rail collisions and press the Enter key to see the list of non-rail collisions. We can continue to filter down the results by selecting to add a new filter, adding in a new condition to our filter, and clicking Enter. Now we can see all collisions reported by demand response operators. Let's add our final filter. Select to add a new filter, add in the new condition, and click Enter. Now we can see all collisions reported by demand response operators at intersections.
So far, we've covered how the available safety data can help your agency with activities like setting safety performance targets or supporting your agency's safety risk management process. But your agency can also use safety data to support another requirement, and that's the requirement to establish safety objectives. As a reminder, safety objectives provide a broad description of the agency's overarching safety goals, and they typically reflect that agency's unique needs and circumstances and perspective. Now, safety objectives can be brief, high-level statements that really serve to set the foundation for SPTs to assess safety performance and the overall effectiveness of your agency's safety management system. For example, a safety objective could be something like strive for continuous improvement in safety performance. Another example, reduce major safety events by 5% over the last fiscal year, or reduce rear-end bus collisions in line with our peers, or support community initiatives to reduce pedestrian fatalities and injuries. So again, these broader, high-level objectives. Now, our full reporters could find safety performance information to help support this process. In a lot of the files that we've talked about so far, specifically, we wanted to point to the major safety events file, also the monthly module data release file where you can find service metrics, and also the annual database vehicle maintenance file if the agency is interested in an objective related to something like mechanical failures. And again, for reduced reporters, a little more limited in what data is available, but the annual database safety information file and the annual database service file where you could find safety data reported at the agency level and annual service metrics by mode, respectively. Using the data we have available online, agencies could use that to benchmark safety performance. Right? You may decide you want to assess your agency's safety performance in relation to the rest of the country, perhaps in relation to specific subsets of the industry, right? Maybe compared to agencies that operate the same modes that I do, or agencies that provide the same level of service or similar level of service, or maybe agencies that are located near me, in my state or in my region. The NTD data products would allow me to make those kinds of breakdowns. So what could this benchmarking look like? Well, this could mean comparing your agency's total fatalities reported by year to those reported by the industry. Or maybe comparing the total rear-ending collisions reported by year to those reported by the industry. It could mean comparing your agency's performance to other agencies who operate the same modes, like the number of collisions reported for demand response over the previous 3 years, the number of fires reported for bus over the previous 5 years. And maybe you want to compare your agency to other agencies who provide a similar service level. Maybe you want to find out the average number of miles between major mechanical failure per year, or the number of collisions with pedestrians per year amongst agencies with similar VRM. Or perhaps you wanted to make statewide comparisons, and you're interested in property damage within my state in the year 2019 for bus modes. Or maybe we want to look at the number of fires that are on vehicles over the previous decade. You could do that with the data products that NTD makes available to the public. Now, FTA previously released a pretty helpful resource that we'd like to encourage you to check out. The Accessing and Using Safety and Security Event Data resource is available on the PTASP Resource Library. And it's really a pretty good overview of the resources that we talked about today. And it can show you some ideas for how you can begin to use those data products to support SMS activities. Also, as a reminder, the PTASP Technical Assistance Center, the TAC, continues to operate its help desk. And the focus of the PTASP TAC is to assist the transit industry with PTASP-related questions. So that includes questions related to ASP development, related to your SMS implementation, and really anything else that you have that you come across related to the PTASP regulation. The TAC is set up to help you answer those questions. We're available by phone from the hours of 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and that's Eastern time. And of course, we're also available by email. And the email address on your screen, ptasp-tac@dot.gov. One of our specialists will get answers back to you quickly. I just wanted to remind everyone that this resource is still available to agencies. Now, if you have questions about the actual NTD data products themselves, we'd recommend that you contact the NTD help desk if you have any issues accessing those files or downloading them, or about when they're updated and those types of things. Or you can reach out to the NTD help desk, and that contact information is provided on your screen here. If you have questions that are more about how I use that information to support my SMS activity and my PTASP requirements, please reach out to the PTASP Technical Assistance Center. Our resource library, the first link on your screen, provides you how you can access all of the materials that the TAC has posted, including some FAQs that get periodically updated based on what we're hearing from the industry. And you can see again the contact information provided on your screen. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. Thank you so much.